A camera overhaul mod that just shows you the jagged low-res booty of one Basilishan? No, that's not what this is. I know we're all incredibly horny over here, but try to reel it in for a few minutes. Don't embarrass yourself. I want to tell you about this camera overhaul mod for a moment. It applies a change to the camera of KOTOR that I didn't really know I was looking for. Now, obviously, if you've played KOTOR on PC at all, which I'm assuming you have if you're watching this video, then you might know about this mod, or know something similar, or a mod that's similar rather, I should say, or at least have done something of your own accord that's probably more involved here. So forgive me for being late to the party here, but I've always heard that it's good to be fashionably late. The mod is called K1 Modern Camera Overhaul Mod, uploaded to Nexus Mods by Definition 42. You can also find a video of the mod linked down below if you want, but I'm going to show you some of it here from my own gameplay. You should know that the latest versions of the mod do give you FOV options where the first version did not, so my aim here is to give you an idea of the different options and how I felt about them, and also why I've grown rather fond of this mod overall. Oh, and make sure you subscribe too if you want, it's a big help. First off, the standard FOV of KOTOR is 55. What this mod does is a few small things that makes KOTOR feel a bit more modern in some ways. The most notable thing that it does do is change the pitch and height of the camera. It pulls it out a bit and it gives you a permanent combat camera while increasing the FOV you have while playing. So it increases, or it seemingly increases, that draw distance so you can see further out, or at least you feel like you're looking further out. And as I said, there's 3 different settings for the FOV with the latest version of the mod. You have 80, 90, and 103. I think at first that the video that they attached does show 103 and I wasn't really sold on it. So I gave it a download with the different settings, and I'm sure if you know anything about modding or altering game files, you can probably create your own version of this, but we're just discussing the FOV settings of the various files that were included with this specific mod that was uploaded by Definition 42. First, I played with the FOV setting at 103. Ultimately, I was not a big fan. It's a bit disorienting at first because while it does add a much wider range of vision, it also distorts that image, and you could see as you look further out, it looks a little more stretched out. It's like a fisheye lens or looking through the world's least powerful magnifying glass. I do appreciate what it is trying to do though. If we take a look at the changelog for the mod, the author I believe even realizes that there was a bit of a fisheye effect on the camera when it's set on 103. Version 0.3, it added an 80 and 90 FOV options with tweaked camera distance. It should look the same, just with less fisheye effect. And regardless, it adds a lot more depth to the environment and it creates this illusion of sorts that the maps you're traveling on are bigger than they actually are. You also feel like the game is a bit faster, but that's because your character is moving across a seemingly larger plane with a larger field of view. I also think it's just a bit too high on the camera, and with that, the added permanence of the combat camera, it's not my favorite setting to have on this mod. But again, as I said, I do appreciate what it's trying to do, and that's just to add a lot of depth and a little longer field of view for the player. Though I will admit, in the wide expanses of Tatooine's Dune Sea, it's actually pretty cool to see. Next, if you set the FOV to 90, it's remarkably more subtle in that fisheye effect that I mentioned before. Though it's still present, it's not nearly as disorienting. Here I think is a better balance of adding a larger range to the player's vision while also pulling out the camera just a tad so it still has that illusion of a larger map or a larger space, and it doesn't distort the image nearly as much. However, this is probably as high as I would go personally, because I think going any higher does deteriorate the image a lot. Even so, just having a wider field of vision does in some small way help age this game up quite a bit in my opinion, and I'm not talking about like a 15-year difference. I'm talking about maybe just adds a couple years onto the game. But even so, I think to make anything more than 90 work, the game probably needs more tinkering and modifications than I am even privy to or would know how to do. Finally, setting the FOV to 80 is the one that I fell in love with. If you've gotten this far, then you're likely asking why I would want to change the camera of the game. It looks fine. And you're right, it does. It does. I'm not going to lie to you about that, but something felt right about this setting. At 80, I felt like you get that perfect blend of extra depth, a wider field of view, and just pulling out that camera a tad. With a slight change in the angle really does give the game a modern feel to it. Push the camera out any further and you do start to get that unsettling fishbowl look, but just enough and you can really give you a whole different perspective on the game. Optically, to your vision, you'll feel that the game is moving and running a bit quicker, and when aboard the Ebon Hawk, the camera won't be super tight on your character's back. And like I said, with the setting at 90 and 103, they do accomplish this same goal of changing the camera a bit, but 80 is a good balance of all of it in my opinion. I played all the settings in combat, and just showing you what it looks like at the FOV set to 103, you can kind of get the impression of why I wasn't a big fan of it. It constantly feels like the game is bubbling out to fit everything on screen, and it's super apparent when you're fighting enemies and you feel like they're further away than they actually are. Now, it's not unplayable, but as I said, when you're talking about it, when we're talking about this mod, just in the camera walking around, it's really not ideal. The FOV at 90 is a lot better with the combat. It's not as much bubbling, but there's not much else to say here other than that it does give you a better field of view you're fighting on. And as I said earlier, if you're looking for a subtle change to the camera of your game like I was, FOV 80 is your best friend. It looks great, it plays great, and the combat is as close as it gets to looking the same as it was before you changed the camera with this mod. Again, all it really is doing is just changing some of the settings to make the game overall feel a bit more modern, or at least the camera to look a little bit different, but that's pretty much the extent of why you might want to use this. Now, there is a KOTOR 2 version of this mod, and I tried it out for about an hour, and overall, I'm a bit more mixed on it than KOTOR 1. Some areas look great, like on the Ebon Hawk, it feels larger and more open, and even on Telos, it is pretty good, adding visual depth to the map with longer feeling corridors and wider spaces. On Duxon, for example, it really does readily show the game's age more, where even with 4K support, it shows you its age with blurry textures and not too flattering gaps in the environment, though that could have just been my game and coupled with all the mods that I have installed. But either way, I'm fairly certain you could fix some of that by doing some more visual mods than I have in my game, but I tend to not mess with that stuff for the most part because I'm a dumbass. Even so, KOTOR 2 as of 2015 has controller support as well as support for resolutions up to 4K. So in some respect, unless you really want to up that field of view, the game already has good camera support, especially on controllers. One of the features of this mod being that it changes the pitch and height of the camera, but with the 2015 update, you can change the height of the camera at any time pretty easily. Worth noting, if you do intend on using this FOV mod, it does keep the camera fixed. You can still rotate it, but you're unable to move it up and down as you please. Another thing that you should know is that performance is going to vary here depending on your setup with your PC. My PC sports a Radeon RX 580, a good graphics card for HD video editing, and most games playing at HD settings and high, but not so good for playing the latest and greatest titles in 4K at 60 FPS at high or ultra settings. But it does run KOTOR pretty well at 4K 60, with 1 or 2 frame dips here and there. But at 4K with this mod installed, I noticed some substantial frame drops in some areas, mainly aboard Telos, and it's consistent enough where if your GPU can't handle the performance difference, you'll probably have to adjust your resolution. Conversely, I'm going to talk about how at HD and KOTOR 1 at 60, the mod runs perfectly fine with no frame dips. The performance with the settings at 80, 90, or 103 is the same in the first game regardless of what you pick. I didn't notice any drops in frames or performance related issues with this mod installed, having tested every FOV setting that is. And that's playing the game at HD resolution in 60 FPS, and again, that's me using my GPU that compared to the glorious powers of the latest graphics cards is basically a potato. And I like potatoes, and I assume you do as well. On the contrary, you actually may feel like everything is running a bit faster and better because visually your party will seem to be covering more ground. My only issue with anything, and this is not necessarily performance related, is if the FOV is too high, as the game likely was never meant to be able to do this, without more tinkering it creates that distortion or bubbling like the occurrences I mentioned a few times here. But again, that's more of a visual thing than a performance thing, to be honest with you. But I am a big fan of this mod in KOTOR 1 at least. As I said at the top of this video here, I wasn't really looking for a mod like this, but I saw it and figured I would try it out. I liked it enough to come here and talk with you all about it. And again, maybe you know a bit more about modding than I do, or not maybe, you definitely do, and have a better mod than this one out there, or you can alter the settings even further to kind of tweak this mod to your liking. Though, I'm pretty sold on this one, and I've been playing with it ever since. For KOTOR 2, I did go back to the standard camera because it just felt better to play with, at least in the second game. If you were like me, and you were looking to change up your 300th playthrough of KOTOR with a somewhat substantial camera overhaul mod, you may want to try this out. I should also mention, with most mods, the recommendation is if you install one, you might be better off trying to do so, at least with some mods, start a fresh playthrough to avoid issues. But I swapped these files out multiple times during my playing and testing and have had no issues to speak of. Again, you can find this mod on Nexus Mods, uploaded by Definition 42. It's called K1 Modern Camera Overhaul Mod. You can also just go to the description of this video and click on the link below that I will, well, link. But thanks for watching this video here. I appreciate it. Let me know what you think down below, and of course subscribe if you like this content and want to see more like it. Like the video if you liked it, or dislike it if you don't. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, and on Twitch, and wherever else you think I might be. Just don't follow me in real life. Either way, I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for watching.